All right, let's talk about what are we going to talk about today, because we want to welcome your calls, 547-8726. My guest today is Martine Valdez. Martine currently works for Tri-City Community Health. Prior to that, he's had about 20 years in higher education. He was also the board president for the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in the Tri-Cities for about 3.5 years. So Martine has, he's very involved. Here's how I want to describe you, Martine. You're very involved in the community in terms of leadership, but also your background and all gives you an interesting set of perspectives that I think will be valuable for other people to hear. That's a setup for you, Martine.
Yes. No, thank you. Thank you again, Christine, for inviting me, and thanks for that kind introduction. Yes, I've had the fortune to be very involved in the Tri-Cities, not just at the Hispanic Chamber, but in a number of other organizations, from United Way to the Reading Foundation to several other boards. And I've tried to sort of give back and help as much as I could. Since I've been here, I was at Columbia Basin College for over 8 years as a professor, as a vice president, and then as the CEO of the foundation. And before that, I taught at a number of colleges and universities in California and New York and New Jersey, and several other places. So, and so I've been in higher ed, and then one of my areas of specialization is immigration and Latinos in the U.S. So
we got some questions that we want to pose to you, because I want to talk to him about, we've been working to get young Hispanics involved at higher education, college level. I want to talk about that. It seems that we have a very, very diverse community here. We have a very large population of Hispanics, Latinos, and I'm wondering why they're not voting. So we're going to pose some of those questions to Martine. And later on, we may also even talk about some of the immigration proposals that have surfaced and how they can work or don't work, and we'll get your perspective on that. So first, Martine, I want to start out by talking about education. It seems that we have been, as I think about it myself, we have been focusing on trying to get Hispanics to go to college for the last 2 decades. 20 years, I'm going to think. And now I want to know, what have we done? How well have we accomplished that goal? What are we doing?
So yeah, I think, Latinos in higher education has been an issue or something that we worked on for quite a while. There have been gains made, and one of the things that actually has started with is that a few years ago, for the very first time in history, Latino graduates, so that's people who graduated from high school, overtook non-Latino whites in college enrollment, actually, just a tiny bit. This was in 2013. Hispanic high school graduates surpassed whites in the rates of college enrollment, which means that more Latinos who graduated from high school that immediate fall entered college. There are, of course, a couple of caveats that even though Latinos enrolled in higher numbers at that year, the Latino dropout rate is still considerably higher than non-Latinos. So even though there were more of them who went, there were less of them who made it to the end of high school. So there were.
So we're talking high school or college?
Right. So
dropout?
College. So one of the things college graduation, college dropouts have decreased. So it went actually from about 28 in 2000. And now it's about 13% Latinos college dropouts, so it's gotten a lot better. But only 5% of non-Latino whites drop out. So a lot more non-Latino whites make it through high school. But of those Latinos that do graduate, a larger percentage are going to college. One of the things, though, that's interesting is that even though we are going to college in larger and larger numbers, many of them tend to go to community college, which is not a bad thing, right, in and of itself. Unfortunately, those that do attend community college have lower attainment rates for bachelor degree. So not just Latinos, anybody who, unfortunately, and community colleges like Columbia Basin College are working on trying to retain and graduate all the graduates. So Latinos also tend to have smaller numbers go to straight to 4-year schools. They tend to go to less selective colleges, even those that are A students. And they also tend to go more part-time. And these are, like I said, it's not a bad thing. Of course, they're going to college, but there's also figures that say that those that go part-time as a full-time have also lower graduation rates. So we have made gains. Like I said, more Latinos are going to college, but we still have room for improvement. And one of the things that's interesting is, here in the Tri-Cities, over 30% of the student population at CBC is made up of Latinos, which, kind of reflects the Latino population in the greater Tri-Cities area.
30%?
Yeah, over 30% actually. Yeah, when I started as a vice president, we were about 18-19%. So they've made considerable progress. And I have some figures here for some other schools. For example, WSU is at about 11%, but some of the more competitive schools are smaller. For example, only 7% of the student population at the University of Washington is 7% is Latino. So we're making some strides, and we're definitely accessing college, particularly community colleges, and some of the regional state colleges. Eastern, for example, is at 14% Latino, and Central at 13%. So all of those colleges, in fact, like Columbia Basin College, have made strides and have increased their outreach to Latinos.
So they're moving up. Yeah, the numbers are there. I guess one of the main questions that comes to me is, why does this population of children need extra help? Why do they need outreach? Why do they need these programs that we have created over the past 20 years to increase those numbers? Why? What's going on?
So I don't know that they're the only ones.
No, you're right.
But I think
not the only.
No, I know. But I think one of the things that happens is that a large percentage of Latinos are first-generation college students. So any first-generation college student doesn't really understand how the system works, right? They don't, because their parents didn't go to college. They don't understand what they have to do to prepare themselves to go to college. That they can't stop taking math at junior year, that they have to continue to take math. They don't understand the types of courses that they need to prepare for a four-year school. They don't understand the application system, because particularly to apply to more competitive, prestigious schools, there are very set deadlines, and you have to have taken your SAT and other things ahead of time. And then they don't necessarily understand how to finance their education. So there's a lot of financial aid out there, so you have to apply, and it's really kind of first come, first served for those that are eligible. So if you apply right at the beginning of when they first open it, and you're eligible, you're more likely to get all of the amount that you're eligible for than if you, say, apply for financial aid in June as opposed to February.
Right, yeah.
There's also, of course, a lot of, so first of all is that first generation, let's say. The other thing, of course, is that for some of these students, if their parents aren't fully bilingual in English, the parents can only help them so much. And then the third one is many of them are also kind of come from working class families. So there are first generation folks whose parents have good, let's say, union jobs, and they're fortunate they don't have the financial constraints. But if you have the financial constraints, and then you hear that in order to go to WSU, it's $27,000, and your family only makes $27,000 or $30,000, how conceivable is that for the parents?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So and because they don't realize that a lot of those students that end up going to WSU or other places, they don't pay $27,000, right? That's sort of the gross price, but the net price ends up being a lot less after you take into account financial aid or scholarships or any other kind of resources. But they get scared away, let alone thinking about going to a private school.
Yeah. All right, so parent involvement is super, super important. All right, we're going to talk more about this, Martine. We are learning a lot about this. Parent influence is incredibly important. This is Meet in the Middle. I'm Christine Brown. We're back in a moment. We're getting our smoking, aren't we?
Yes, our smoking
Smoky.
motif. Well, why not make the best of it with Brownsville Station?
There you go. I like that. We are talking to Martine Valdez today. He is currently with Tri-City Community Health, but has spent a good 20 years in higher education. We're learning about getting more and more students, what would be considered minority students, but I have a hard time even describing Latinos or Hispanics minority anymore in the community that we live in. But Martine, I want you to give us a little bit of background about your situation, because I think you told me that here you have, you went to, where'd you go, UCLA? And your father doesn't even read.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I grew up in Los Angeles, and my dad came from a very, very, very poor family, so he had to start working, you know, shining shoes when he was a young man. And he can read, but he doesn't know how to. He signs with an X, actually. So,
Wow. Okay.
So my dad is, you know, functionally illiterate, I guess you could say, and my mom did. She comes from a large family, and she was able to go up to the 6th grade, which at the time was, you know, quite a feat in Mexico, and so. So I grew up in Los Angeles and had the fortune of, you know, liking school and having the support of a lot of folks around me. So I went, you know, I was first in my family to go to college. So I went to UCLA and studied economics and history, and then also did well and was fortunate enough to get a fellowship to go to Stanford University. So yeah, so I'm a very, very fortunate man.
Yes, you are. And earlier we were talking about the important role of parents. And if I have any observation, my observation is I don't care who you are, I don't care what your economic status is. If you tell your children from the day that they are born that they are going to college no matter what, that's just the expectation you create. They will go to college.
Yeah. No, and I think that's great. I remember being a young man and. You know, with my family and looking at, you know, watching TV and watching these shows like, I don't know, the Brady Bunch or something like that. And sort of college, like you said, college was an expectation to a lot of middle-class families, and for me it was sort of a dream. And so, yeah, so how do you work with working-class, poor, first-generation families to have them understand that sort of the importance of college and the importance of it being a reality, right? How do you make it a reality, not just an expectation? But I think for a lot of folks, they have done these surveys, and you know, Latino parents and Latino youth find higher education, college, just as important as everybody else. So it's not that they don't find it important; it's just that because they don't understand sometimes how the system works, it seems daunting, and it seems scary, and it seems unattainable.
Yes, out of their reach.
Right.
Well, and that's where I think some of these programs that I have observed, kind of like Gear Up or some of the other college prep programs, actually focus a lot on the parents and bringing the parents along as much as they do the children, don't they?
Right, and that's, I mean, and because, like I said, I don't think parents discourage students from going. I mean, on rare occasions they do, but I think in general most people encourage them, but they don't understand it, and they're afraid. They're really, like I said, when they see a $27,000
Right.
yearly price tag, the other misconception I think sometimes is that they don't understand that you don't have to be, that college is not just for 4.0 students or for rich students, right? That,
Yes.
right. And I think
Yes.
sometimes that's what they think. Well, if I'm not rich, and if my son or daughter isn't 4.0 students, you know, because they assume, of course, that somebody that has a 4.0 will get scholarships to go,
Yes.
then my student will not make it, right? So the idea, a lot of the things when I was vice president at CBC, actually one of my roles as vice president for diversity and outreach was how do we get to the students first, those first generation students who don't understand how it works. But we found out, just as you mentioned, is how do we also educate the parents?
Mm-hmm.
Because as we all know, you know, right, I as a middle class person, I'm going to be very involved in my child's preparation and education. And how do you get them to understand that, one, you know, there is such a thing as financial aid. There's a lot of scholarships out there for students. For example, when I was the CEO of the foundation a couple of years ago, we gave out over $1 million in scholarships just for CBC students. At
CBC? Wow, okay,
Yes, and so
yes.
this was,
Yes.
2 years ago was the first time that they gave, we surpassed that year. This year again, they did the same, over $1 million in
Mm.
scholarships. Just at CBC, and that's just the CBC Foundation. That's not any other organizations, right? So there's all this funding out there that, like I said, again, you don't have to be a 4.0 student. In fact, you know, a lot of scholarships out there are for particular, there's scholarships for people that are starting different careers. There's
Mhm.
scholarships for people that want, let's say, just to pass a school district or homeish. There's, there's all kinds of different scholarships, and many years, scholarships throughout the U.S. go undisbursed because nobody applies, right? So how do we educate? How do we work with both the students and the parents, like I said, particularly the parents of first-generation students, to understand that not only the importance of college, I think that they already get, but that college is attainable. And because it's attainable, we should, as you said, make it an expectation, right? So now we want everybody to say, okay, everybody's going to go to college and graduate from college just like they graduate from high school. The option is whether you're going to go to graduate school or not,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, well, I don't mean college. I
Right.
shouldn't say that. What I mean is post-high school specific education to get yourself a good job. And that could
Yeah.
be any number
Yeah.
of different education programs. So I don't want to just zero it down to college. And I hope that people understand that. Hey, here's our phone number if you want to join in our conversation. It's 547-8726. So let me share this with you. Some time ago, we've got a caller. Let's go ahead and add them to our conversation right now. Hi, how you doing today? Are you there?
Oh,
Oh,
I'll
gone.
make sure you call back. You know, something to bring up too, these basic principles when it comes to college, they pretty much apply to everybody.
They do.
We kind of went through this with a couple of our older daughters, and it's good to ask questions and reach out and seek help, because there are a lot of these opportunities out there, but you don't know about them. And if you try to do it all on your own, it is daunting.
Right.
Yeah, you need some help. All right.
I want to clarify that, you know, I went to school and the funding I got was based on my income, not on my race. So I think we have to be careful with the assumptions we make. So mine was based on purely income. So that was the first point I want to make. I mean, things have changed in terms of funding sources, as I said. So normally, and maybe the first person, maybe like himself, was not eligible. If you have two people in college, now it's a different calculation because you have two people in college based on the same system. So it's likely that they would have gotten both financial aid if there had been two kids in college. So the financial aid system is set up in a way to, it's not, like I said, an all or nothing. You can get partial aid. You can get everything from somebody who's homeless, who's probably going to get everything paid, to somebody who barely makes, you know, who maybe only gets a little bit of help for books and stuff. So that's kind of all or nothing. And the financial aid, Pell Grants and all of that is all, has nothing to do with the race. It's all with income.
And FAFSA is another excellent, we utilize
Well, that's-
that. You know, and that's one it's pretty vanilla. It goes off income, because I've filled it out twice, and we know what an adventure is, parents, if you've tried to do it.
Yeah.
But, you know, there are some decent financial opportunities out there, but from what we saw, that from my filling it out, it was pretty much, what do you make, you know?
Yes,
what's
but I do
your-
think it is fair to acknowledge that there have been over the years a number of programs that were geared to try to get more people of minority status a higher education. So yes, I think we have to agree, it is true that there was money available for people because of certain categories, and that is minority groups. So I understand that. We have to acknowledge that that is true.
Yeah, that has, you know, there were, I think in the past, particularly in the 70s and the 80s, there was all these programs created for that, but I guess I don't want to say that I think that certain people are kept out because that they gave his money away to somebody else because of the race. But I think there are and continue to be a lot of programs out there, but a lot of programs like Europe, for example, or student support services. There's a number of programs that are geared to special groups, traditional underrepresented groups, or some of them, but a lot of them actually are for example, student support services includes not just underrepresented people, it also includes any first generation person. It includes non-traditional students. So for example, at CBC we have a program where a lot of folks that come back after 10 or 15 years, that is, people are considered non-traditional if they don't go straight to college from high school, and then people that are disabled. So there are some programs, I think those are making less and less of an impact, if you will. That those programs like Europe, which you mentioned earlier, is not race specific. It's in fact geared towards, it's an income base, so they can only work with, I think, school districts that have a certain amount of free and reduced lunch sort of areas.
That seems to be the measurement for all. We better take a break here, but we'll be back. We have more to talk about, and I also want to talk about, we'll move forward and talk about voting. So stay with us here on Meet in the Middle. I'm Christine Brown. Good. Martine Valdez is our guest today, and we're talking about changing people going to college or family expectations, and I want to leave that topic behind, but I want to say that my observation is that we have more and more people moving through the economic ladders in our society. I just see more and more people, Hispanics and Latinos, moving into the middle class. And it's really exciting because all of those people are contributors and they're paying taxes, and that's what always goes off in my brain. We're paying taxes and we're making it a better community for everybody. So that's good stuff.
I think that is the case. I mean, although it's sort of, it wasn't my family experience. A lot of these kids, they come from families that worked in the fields, or the parents might still work in the fields, and maybe they worked in the fields during the summers or when they were kids, but now, many of them were the first in their family to go to college, and either a technical degree or short degree, they go to CBC and get some sort of technical degree in the medical field or mechanics or something else. But then you do have a lot of them, transfer on to WSU or Eastern or other places and get 4-year degrees, and then they're now all of a sudden they're first in the family to have a career as opposed to a job, and with all that sort of that implies, or and making a nice salary, and and it's exciting, and they are we're all, like myself, like I said, I'm a first generation and trying to contribute more and more to the community that we live in.
All right, so what I find fascinating, Martine, is that on a national level, we talk about the huge Hispanic voting bloc. And certain people will not be able to be elected if they do not cater to that group of people, because they are a growing group of people. But I see that a lot of Hispanics locally in our area, Latinos, do not vote. They're not registered to vote. I do remember, I've done many, I don't even want to count the number of times that I've stood out in front of a grocery store trying to get people to register to vote. And it's interesting that people who walk by and give you not even a nod, not even a glance, like, I'm not even interested in registering to vote. So what's going on there? Is that changing?
I think it is, so it's true that unfortunately Latinos in the past and even in the 2012 elections voted in lower numbers than African Americans or non-Latino white Americans. But you did in the actually 2012 elections, you had 12.2 million Latino voters, but you had another 11.2 eligible Latinos who didn't vote. So that there is an issue there.
Oh gosh, okay, well that's 50% almost.
Almost.
And for our local last time around, we were pitiful. We were in the less than 20% of voters.
So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yes,
there's a lot of work to be done. I think there's a lot of work in just consciousness raising, and I think making folks realize that their vote does make a difference, that their vote counts, and I think getting sort of a get out the vote kind of work out there, like I said, voter registration. There's certainly a lot of work to be done. But I think, you know, we have Latinos have on average are very, very young. And you know, I know several 100,000 Latinos turn 18 every year. I think there are more because a lot of the Latino population is young. They're very, of course, they're American. They're enmeshed in the U.S. culture, and hopefully, as that population grows and become involved, the percentage of Latinos increases. But I don't want to. I mean, I actually personally don't think we kind of just have to leave it up to chance to do it. I think there has to be work done. And in fact, I remember last year during the Mariachi Festival, I got together a couple of other young professionals, and we had a voter registration booth out there. And you know, we had some people, you know, even an older lady who's like in her 60s probably. You know, she got her voter registration. She got her husband registered, and she got her son, who was in his 30s, registered. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, because in the Tri-Cities in particular, our Latino population is relatively recent, let's say compared to places like Los Angeles or San Antonio.
Okay.
There's a lot more work to be done. So because I think that we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the tradition, if you will, the history, and so we have to establish, we have to do things to more consciously, more strategically to get folks involved. So there's work to be done. We can't just wait and say, okay, you know, in 10 years, because all these people are going to turn 18, they'll automatically vote.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do that. And like I said, we have to, how do you convince people that their vote matters?
Well, that's across the board, I'll
Right.
tell you.
Yeah.
So we need an effort to get new people who have never voted before to sign up. I don't care what color
Right.
you are. And then we need to get people to come back to voting, a tradition that they may have been involved in 20 years ago, but are not currently voting.
And to
So-
become, you know, involved in the political
Yes,
process.
the process.
It was kind of interesting to note that after Doc Hastings announced his retirement, there was a candidate out of the Yakima area who ran, Estacio Beltran, I believe.
Yes,
Right,
something,
that was
yeah.
And I know that one of his big campaign things was, he said, you know, whether you're going to vote for me or whomever, I don't care, but he really, one of his platforms was just trying to get people to sign up. And,
Mhm.
you know, it was fairly effective, you
Yeah.
know, and he had a good message with it. He said, regardless of your race, whether you're going to vote for me or Newhouse or whomever, he said, you know, pay attention, get registered. We tell that to everybody,
Yes.
you know. Because
Yeah, I
I've
mean-
always said you can't complain if you don't vote.
Right. No, you know, the level of civic engagement, not just among Latinos, but as you said, Christine, among, you know, the general population is not very high as in some other, I think, countries around the world. And how do we get people engaged and realize that, yeah, don't just complain. If there's something out there that you don't like, you have to get involved. You have to participate, and at the very, very, very least, you have to register and you have to vote.
Yes, well, I see that as the American way. We're going to take a break here, but we are going to come back and talk about minorities, I say Latinos, being involved on boards and committees in our community and also running for office. So we're back in a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back to Meet in the Middle. I'm Christine Brown. We're talking about Latinos being involved in voting or running for office or sitting on boards. And, you know, when we have a significant population and organizations are always looking, they really want to respond to the community needs, the folks in the community, that sort of thing. It's hard to do that when you don't have good representation of those people. So, Martine, what's going on to get more people involved on boards and commissions and folks running for office? I mean, this time around, I see quite a few Hispanic surnames on the ballot, which we haven't in the past. So.
Yeah, we actually had a very good number of people running for particularly city council in Pasco.
Pasco,
We had,
yeah.
I think it was 5 or 6 Spanish learning people, Latinos, and I think at least one of them, Berta Aranda Glad, is going to be in a runoff with Matt Watkins, Mayor Matt Watkins. So at least one of them, I think, made them. I'm not sure. There was somebody in, I think, District 1 who, a couple people ran there. I'm not sure if one of them made it. So yeah, so it's actually good to see people, over 50% of the population in Pasco in particular is Latino. And I'm not saying that we have to have a Latino to represent Latinos, but
No.
we should take ownership also, right? We have a responsibility, in fact, to each other and to the city to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important to do that. And in terms of boards, I think one of the things is that, as I said, because we are a fairly, at least in the Tri-Cities, fairly, the larger number of Latinos has really increased in the last 20 years. The older generations are folks that, worked out in the field a long time. They had, those jobs in the fields, like right now, if you're working at Apple or during the summers, or if you're working, in the asparagus, those are long days, and, you work 6 days a week or 7 days a week. So not only are they tired, physically tired, but those schedules, I think, didn't allow for folks to get civically engaged. But now, again, with a larger and larger number of Latinos, particularly young Latinos, getting college degrees, having careers that give them some time and some knowledge, I think there is a responsibility for Latinos, for everybody, but for Latinos in particular in this case, because we haven't been involved, to give back. And in fact, as I mentioned earlier, I've had the fortune of being able to, because when I came here, I have already a series of experiences to be able to be involved and asked to join a number of boards and committees. And so I've been fortunate, and one of the things that I found out is that often I was the only Latino, and I don't speak for all Latinos. I've studied Latinos in the U.S., so I can talk about that because I've studied them, not just because I'm personally Latino, right?
Yes.
But so there's something to that. But I also think that that there needs to be more of us getting involved, and so. I think I was mentioning earlier to you that about a year and a half ago, I decided to work with a number of young Latino professionals to help train them. And it's, I called it the Latino Professionals Leadership Development Group. I didn't exclude non-Latinos, but it was a sort of
we're out of time though, but tell me where people can go if they want to learn more about that.
So if they want to learn more about that, actually they can call me directly at 509-430-1081, 509-430-1081. And I'm just working with Latinos to help them prepare to be involved, to be civically engaged.
Civically engaged. I love that.
That's really what I want. And how do we, it's our responsibility.
Yes.
As citizens here.
It sounds like there's movement there, and I realize that I am an impatient person. But I've been observing this for a good 2 decades.
Yes.
So it's not just yesterday. Okay, we're back in a moment here. This is Meet in the Middle. I'm Christine Brown.